So today I'm working on one of those random projects that I just get a sudden idea to go ahead and do and I get excited about. I did this years ago on my Tacoma and I randomly thought to do it to the Miata, but at the time there was no need, so I didn't do it. So recently I was like, you know what? I'm going to go ahead and do this, so in the event that I get my KA swap done and I want to hit the track, right, I can mess around with spacers, different wheels and things, and just have stronger studs in general. So I've got a set of ARP studs. I've got a set of 949 Racing lug nuts for the car. These are their alloy lug nuts, super light. I don't normally like nor trust aluminum lug nuts. However, I do like and trust and generally agree with most things that I've read by Emilio from 949 Racing / Super Miata, and I know that their products are hardcore. So if they say that these things will work, I trust them. I know that they run this stuff on their race cars, so they've tested it. Still probably going to put some anti-seize on my lugs, on my studs, not going to lie, just so they don't seize up over time. But other than that, I'm excited to get this going. So I've got 4 packs of the 949 Racing lug nuts, as I mentioned. I've got 4 packs of ARP. This is part number 100-7719. It's for Mazda Miatas from 90 to 93, right, front and rear. If you have a post 93 car, right, so 94 onward, you need a different part number for the rear. I will try and put that for you guys in the description. Not sure why that changed, but just keep that in mind. You will not be able to use 4 of these. Now, the keen-eyed among you may have noticed that there's only 3 packs of ARP studs over there. And the reason for that is I've already gone ahead and installed 1 pack. I wanted to verify before I started filming whether or not these could be installed without removing the rotors, and which actually requires you to first remove the calipers. So I've seen where everyone that does this automatically removes the caliper and removes the rotor, and I was like, I have a sneaking suspicion I don't have to do that. So I went ahead and tested my theory, and I was 100% correct. So I'm going to show you guys exactly what I did and how I did it. But first, let's go over what you need. You obviously need the 4 packs of lug nuts. You obviously need the 4 packs of ARP studs. Now, if you already had an open-end lug nut in 12mm by 1.5, then you could just reuse your lug nuts. They just have to be open-end or very long or deep lug nuts. Otherwise, if you had standard length ones, they would not be able to thread all the way down on the extended studs. Tools-wise, you really don't need much, right? So I've got a stud installation tool. You could just use a stack of washers, right, and a spare lug nut from your old studs. I'm using this tool and a spare lug nut from my old studs. This is just much better than a stack of washers. I'm having a much easier time of it than I did when I did the Tacoma ones with washers. I recommend you buy it. It's like 15 bucks on Amazon. It's nothing fancy. You're gonna need a sledgehammer. I've got a mini sledge. You don't need a full length one, right? You're gonna need an impact driver. So you could theoretically do this with a breaker bar. I don't recommend it. It's going to be much harder. You're going to run the risk of the stud spinning instead of coming through. Just go with an impact. Make your life a lot easier. As a matter of fact, I bought that impact in order to install the extended studs on my Tacoma, because I did the first few by using a really long breaker bar on a socket wrench, and it was a total headache. That makes it cake. Have a spare battery ready to roll, and it's not the end of the world. You should be able to knock this out in a really short amount of time. I want to say, realistically, if I were doing them nonstop and not filming, I could easily knock out the fronts in 30 minutes, maybe less. Alright, so in order to remove the studs without having to remove the brake caliper and rotor, what you're going to do is you want to rotate, right, each stud till it's in the position of this little part of the deflector, the dust shield or whatever back here. You want to align this to that because that kind of has more space there and gives you room to pull out the stud. So that's going to be step 1. Put a nut on here, threaded it kind of part way. Now, I'll be real, you could just beat on the nut. I mean, you could just tap the stud directly, but you run the risk that you might balloon the end of this, and on its way out it'll get stuck. So you could put a nut on there, right, and just go like this. Right, unthread that,
that's already loose. So now you can just reach around behind, right, coming in through that slot that I mentioned, and you pull it out. Out of curiosity, I'm going to take a risk for you guys and find out how strong these factory Miata studs are. Right? And I'll just... Yep, you can just hit them. The only downer is now that's like down in there somewhere. And I have to dig it out. So another advantage of using a nut on it is that it doesn't fly out of control. I'm pretty sure that's hanging there in the deflector, so yeah, don't do that. Lesson learned. I'll have to dig that out, but oh well. Oop, I know exactly where it is now. Jeez. Alright, so using this magnet, I was able to pull out the old stud. Let's keep on removing the others. Now, before I take this one out, I'm going to put in a couple of the extended studs, just so I don't lose location here. So in order to get the extended studs, if you feel around back here where the caliper bracket is, there's a gap where I can stick my hand in and touch the face of the rotor. As a matter of fact, let's see if I can turn this. Not sure if you can see, but I can touch my finger. By putting this one here, I can touch my finger that's in the back, right? So I have a direct line of access where I can put my stud through. So we'll go ahead, we'll pop open back of ARPs real quick. Grab those guys. I can basically come through this gap, and with a light this would be a lot easier. I'd be able to easily find this, right? It's a struggle to do it like this. However, take an old stud. Now you can find where that old stud is inside of there, right? With your hand you can feel the location of it, and that will allow you to just, you can touch your old stud with your new one and push your new one out of the hole, right? And now your new one's right there. So we'll keep rotating this and doing the same thing over and over. Kind of reaching around, you know, through the front of the spindle and coming back, I can automatically feel where the old stud is there. All right, and I know I need to shift this a little bit. There you go, so I have room to pull through. Now with these three in place doing the job of locating that, go ahead, grab my hammer, and tap this last one out. Alright, that's that. All those studs are out. Let's rotate this back. Pop a stud in here, just for reference. And bring out a new stud. Beautiful. Now, with the studs in place, go ahead and take the stud installation tool. This kind of like bearing looking thing goes toward the rotor, right? And I will take one of my old lug nuts, right? It becomes a sacrificial lug nut. I'll just thread it on here, right? And I'll kind of stick my hand in here and push
my stud. So it kind of feels like it's aligned to the splines. Just tighten this a little bit until it seats all the way down. You want to use a lug nut that fits kind of loose a little bit. Because if it's full of crud and it's too tight, it's not going to seat all the way down. Alright, once you got this, let's see. Oh, one thing I forgot to mention. When you're doing this, if the rotor is rotating, you are wasting strength of the impact. So hold it like that. Looks like we're out of battery. Let's swap in the other one. This battery's having it. You'll kind of want to reach around and just feel the back of the stud and make sure it's seated down against the hub. You don't feel a little gap. Once that gap is gone, then you know you're all the way in. A little more. Good enough. That is one advantage of doing this with brakes off, is that you could just take a look at the hub. But that's all the way in as much as it's gonna be. Might be even over much. Alright, one in. Next one over. That's much nicer because it's actually kind of lining up nicely to the splines. Give me a little bit less trouble than the last one did. So always feel it, see how far down you are. Feels good to me. A little bit more. Alright, you don't want to overdo it, destroy your hub, so. Another, this one is splining, this one is not.
good enough, more than good enough. One more. Alright, that's that. Let's go ahead and put our wheels back on, and we can actually go and chuck these old studs since we don't need them anymore. Alright, so now I'm really quickly just going to put the wheel on and put on one of the lug nuts just to see where it's going to sit. Got my fancy lug nuts here. Let's go ahead and pull them out of the case. Like I said, only need one for now, and you'll see why. I'm going to go ahead and place this on the studs. Absolutely love the look of that. I'm going to thread my lug nut until it seats all the way down. Okay, so now I know that when my lug nut is seated all the way down, you just see the tip of the extended stud. You don't really see much thread. So that means that I can kind of put anti-seize wherever I want, and it's not going to be visible past the lug nut, which is something I don't want because it ruins the look. And also having something sticky on the outside where it's exposed to dirt is never a good idea, because then you're going to get filth all over your wheels and your studs and stuff. Alright. So I'll take this out really quickly, remove the wheel, and then I'll take my anti-seize and I'll apply it to each one of the studs. I know that as the nut comes by there, it's going to take that anti-seize and spread it down onto whatever surface that it's touching. So I don't have to get too creative there. Right, and I don't really want it to touch the wheel too much when I slide the wheel through, so I'll just do this. Just dab it down gently. go ahead and put our wheel back on. Alright, we take and install a lug nut here. Just to hold it in place. I'll do the same diagonally across. And I'll do the other two. Man, that does not feel good. That's no bueno. The thread might be dirty. Hopefully it's not bad thread on the stud or the lug nut. That automatically just looks so good. Okay, that's definitely no bueno, the way that that feels. I'm not sure if it's the lug nut that's bad, or if it's something filthy on the stud. Let's try wiping it. I mean, I cleaned all these studs individually, so I would be surprised. Let's try transferring one lug nut. Make sure I wipe my gloves well, because I don't want anti-seize on the surface of the lug nuts. You'll never get rid of that silvery look. Now we'll know if it's the stud or the lug nut. It's the stud. Stud's pretty dirty. So we'll use one of the crappy old lug nuts in order to clean it. Alright, I got one of the old lug nuts cleaned and put on. I've run it back and forth a couple of times at this point. That thread should be cleaned. I didn't really have much resistance with this going on, so I hope my aluminum lug nut will fit nicely. Definitely got some shavings and some filth there. Oops, knock off this wheel cap. Gives you an idea of how well that's on. Let's see if we can get this guy to thread. Alright, it's going. Still some resistance, but it's not super bad. Nice. Alright, that's that. I'll do the other side and then lower this and torque these things down to 80 foot-pounds.